What's up, guys? DRAM here with Randy again. I'm going to bring to you a video this week about lesser known systems. Some of you may have known them, some of you may have played them, but there's a lot of people out there that didn't have the option to go out and buy different systems every time they came out. And some of these systems died out before there was even a chance to buy them.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
You want to start it off?
Sure. My first system that I'm going to talk about was one of my personal favorite systems. Was the 3DO. Great system, very expensive. I remember the first 3DO was $4.99, which by today's standards isn't horribly, inconceivable, because I think the PS4 and the PS3, the Xbox One both came out for $4.99. But you got to think, in the 90s, that was unheard of,
A ton of money.
Yeah, because PlayStation 2 came out at like $2.99. So you had this 3DO, which was kind of before that. That was $4.99. But then they came out with FZ1, which was the very first model, which was a drawer loading one. Then it came out with the FZ10 in an effort to make it cheaper, which was like $100 cheaper, and you could pop open the thing and put the game in. Then enters Gold Star. Now, the irony here is that all of them were made by a company called Matsushita Electronics. But Matsushita pretty much made about everything back then. There was two companies, Matsushita and Sony. That was pretty much about it. Everything else was made, everything like Gold Star, Daewoo, Panasonic, Philips, Magna, all that was made by Matsushita Electronics out of Japan. And they just slapped different label names on it. And as I say before, it's real easy to be their own competition. So anyway, so the 3DO came out first to introduce what I would call realistic full motion video. Now Sega CD had full motion video, but
it was grainy.
Yeah, it looked like sandpaper, 3DO was clear. And then back in those days, Saturday Night Live was really popular. Wayne's World, the movies had come out, Ladies and all that. Well, they came out with a game called Daedalus Encounter that had Tia Carrere in it, and she was hot. Especially back then, there wasn't many hot Asians. And the fact that she was factored into a game, made all the difference. But there was such classic games on that system, like Return Fire, capture the flag type game. You had to go out, scout, blow up, build stuff. Then when you discovered the flag, you had to go back to your base, get your Jeep, and go get it. But the thing that was awesome about it was when it got you hyped so hard, was when you got the flag, it played the William Tell Overture. So it's like dun 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 dun, dun and just like yes, I got it back to the thing.
Run.
And then when you finally made it back, or you got shot, this little skull and crossbones would come on, and the guy would go ha 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 ha. It's just one of those things that got you hyped up. And then you had games like Deus Count, Return, like Wing Commander. They made it for the PlayStation, but it was 20 times better on the 3DO. And even though Mark Hamill didn't look like Luke Skywalker anymore, but it was a very good game. Like I said, full motion video. They put a lot of time in it. Had a lot of real actors in it. People who went on to make real movies and stuff were in that.
Yeah, looked just like the captain there. I can't remember the dude's name. But he was in a show called Herman's Head, I believe.
I think so too. Yep.
Some of y'all probably wouldn't remember that either.
Yeah. But of course, Luke Skywalker was in it.
But one of the things I remembered most about the 3DO.
Lemmings?
Well, yeah, your Lemmings game, but the fighting game. What was it? It actually had
Way of the Warrior.
White Zombie did the soundtrack.
I'm not gonna lie, the game was kind of cheesy the way it moved around. It was a little hokey, but the whole Rob Zombie's 1965 playing while you're fighting, beating the shit out of people, and it's like, you're bad, it's like, it was awesome. And the other thing that I really liked about the 3DO is that it made a deal with SNK. So you had games like Samurai Showdown, King of Fighters, things like that. And I remember this day playing Samurai Showdown, and I can't remember his name, it started with an H. I always want to say Hoyukin, but that's not it. That's the Street Fighter ball. But he would go, Bonito do, Ipun! That would be like begin. Like, Ipun, Bonito do. And then he would say some stuff, and they had a little blonde-head, blue-eyed guy from California in the game that had the little dog. I think his name was Siegfried or Calfred or something. And he would like, go! And you hear the dog, I just thought that was hilarious. But those games are great ports from the Neo Geo,
Yep.
And, 3DO was definitely ahead of its time. And unfortunately, they got stupid and screwed themselves in the game, but that's a whole other video. That actually probably the next video we'll do. We'll talk about some video game lore.
Yeah,
so pay attention to the video after this. We're going to talk about the 3DO. why they didn't make it, and also talk about things like the yellowing of Super Nintendos, what really happens. Is it really a carton of Marlboro that causes it? And also, I'm going to give y'all a sneak peek on how to truly clean your Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis games without messing them up, and to make them work without having to give them questionable, I don't want to say blowjobs, but yeah, so you don't have to blow your games.
Alright, you did leave out 2 of the best games.
For the 3DO?
Yep.
I'm scared.
Need for Speed.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, Road Rash. Yes. Absolutely. Definitely, they were on the Genesis, but they were grainy.
Yeah, and
But on the Airband, oh,
3DO, the Corvette looked like a Corvette.
sure did. And I'll never forget that they came out with Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, I think it was, where you could be the cop.
Yeah.
And that was a whole nother story. When you could be the Popo chasing the racer, it's like, yeah!
Get them.
Definitely great.
Alright, guys. One I'm going to talk about goes back to Sega Genesis days. I think it was right before Sega CD come out. I know you can be adapted into the Sega CD, wasn't it? They had certain games for Sega CD.
Yes, it was after the Sega CD was released.
Yeah.
The Sega CD came out, I want to say, about a year and a half after the Genesis Model 2.
Yeah.
And then the Sega CD came out, and then came this.
There was the Sega Genesis 32X.
Let's just keep stacking shit on top of each other.
Exactly. By the time you got done, you had this 200-pound behemoth.
It's got to be better.
But their idea was, let's not make a system, let's just add on. Well, that was fine, and then so you got a couple games. I remember one I had was the Motocross. I loved back then I loved
Motocross Mania.
Yeah, I loved the driving games and stuff, and thought this was going to be great. Well, it was all great as long as the connection was good. You just like a Nintendo, the pin connector. You stick the 32X on top of the Genesis, you'd be playing for a while, and then some reason it would just cut off. It'd lose connection.
Well, a lot of people didn't realize the importance of putting those little clips inside their system. Like, it's just to hold the door open. No, it wasn't. It was to hold it and keep it tight and in place. And that was the downfall to the 32X. Well, no, that wasn't the downfall.
Well, no, then you also had another power supply you had to hook up.
Yeah, when you were done, 3 power supplies.
Yeah.
Yep. I remember that.
And then you had the other extension wire that went out the back of the 32X into the back of the Genesis. Mm-hmm. And then if you had the CD, you had the CD system slapped to the side or under the Genesis. I mean, it was just...
And it wasn't that bad, honestly, if you had the Sega CD Model 1, the Sega Genesis Model 1, and a 32X, because you had a space about this big, about that tall. Wasn't horrible. But if you had a Genesis 2 with a Sega CD Model 1 that hung off the side, and then you had the 32X slapped in the top, that was taking up a lot of room on your entertainment center, that's for sure.
And don't forget, if you had the 32X up there, then a Jane Genie
yes,
and Sonic and Knuckles, let's just keep adding to the top of this thing.
Yeah, you could tower that thing. And what a lot of people don't realize is that what the Sega CD did, it didn't actually add anything but the capability of CD. Mm-hmm. Bigger storage. That's what the Sega CD added. It didn't have an extra processor in it or anything. Still 16-bit.
Nope.
The 32X actually had a second 16-bit processor. But here's the catch. That processor wasn't a gaming processor. It was a video processor, which allowed for you to process more polygons and render better graphics. As we've seen, it really didn't render any better graphics because it wasn't true 32-bit.
Nope.
You can't add... I mean, you can't take a 16-inch tire and a 16-inch tire and make it a 32-inch tire. It just don't work like that. Same way here. You can't take a 16-bit system and a 16-bit system make a 32-bit. Don't work like that. You got to build a whole new system. And that's the only downfall I really saw to that. Was that, like even the programmers were like, the hell? I mean, all this extra programming work in the game looks the same. Why are we doing it? That's why there's only 14 titles for the 32X?
At all.
And only one's rare. Like, they flooded the market with all of them except for one at the very end when it
Didn't
died.
Virtual Boy come out around the same time as 32X?
No, I think it was a little later on in life.
Yeah.
I think Virtual Boy was around the PlayStation 1 era.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure... Well, I know I worked at Microplay when it came out.
Because it come in them hard cases.
Uh-huh. And I just... that was another one that was just a horrible idea. It was cool to have. I wouldn't mind owning one, but it's not something I'm going to pay for, per se. I'm not going to pay retail for it. I'll find one day at a yard sale or thrift store or something, and I'll pick it up.
But again, you could use the 32X without the CD, but without a Sega Genesis, your 32X was just, it was useless. There was nothing you could do with it. It wasn't a standalone system.
And I had the 32X CD games too.
Yeah.
Supreme Warrior and that looked the same as the Sega CD games were.
So I mean, you wasn't getting anything better, honestly.
No, it was just a marketing ploy to get your money. That's all it was. They could have easily programmed those games. They would have looked a little bit choppier, but not much. If you just reprogrammed them and did regular Sega CD games, it would have been no different. So, my last system I'm going to talk about is one of my personal favorites because in this era, I was really into Japanime and stuff, and I was really into fighting games. And it was Neo Geo Gold. Very expensive. I got lucky on mine. Back then, they were importing them from Japan. They were $600. And of course, they were in Japanese. They didn't make them in America.
They were good though.
But they were worth it. Now, they came with controllers that were joysticks, like arcade joysticks. But then again, $600. But a lot of that was import tax. Now, I didn't understand that when I was younger. But now, looking back, I realize why it cost so much for those things. But the games were like books. I mean, they were huge. But there's really big chips in them. But, it's to make you think you're getting a lot for your money. And, like I said, again, back then, that's when I was in Japan. I mean, I was into fighting games. So I didn't care that it was in Japanese and I couldn't read it. I was dating a girl at the time who was really into Sailor Moon and anime like that, and she actually was going to go overseas to do an exchange thing in Japan, so she was learning Japanese and stuff. So if I got stuck somewhere, she could pretty much read it all and tell me what it was. But like I said, classic games, King of the Fighter, even like Baseball Stars, sports games, freaking love them. So definitely one of my favorite systems out of Japan. There's been a lot of stuff that come out of there that's kind of kooky and stuff, but Neo Geo is definitely it. I really wish it would have caught on here other than the Neo Geo Pocket.
Yeah.
That was another short-lived handheld system that came out in America, but basically it was a rehash of all the Neo Geo games, but it was a great system too, but it was a little teeny tiny though.
You on that one?
Yeah, that's pretty much about it.
My favorite that it was pretty big at its time, but I mean not everybody had one. Mine was the TurboGrafx 16, and to whereas Randy hit on the games for the Neo Geo being huge books, it was cool because the games for the TurboGrafx were about the size of a credit card.
Oh yeah,
and it was so cool for carrying around. Didn't have to have huge carrying cases for the games. In fact, he's got one right.
I'll show you one right here, buddies. Now,
and this was one of the best ideas that was ever made.
That was it. And then the beauty part about this is, see this right here? Take a pencil eraser. That sucker is clean and will play for the rest of your life.
Yep. And they had some very good games on the TurboGrafx. You had Bonk's Adventure 1 and 2. You had Keith Courage. There was Splatterhouse, which was one of my favorites. World Series Baseball. I mean, there was Outrun. There was all kind of games.
How about that one? Star Wars Arcade for the 32X?
Yeah.
See, we were just talking about that. And this was the best one they ever had. The golf. Not really.
But not only did you have the system, but they came out with some great... I mean, you had the TurboGrafx CD system, TurboGrafx handheld, which the handheld actually played the regular TurboGrafx games.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, it was honestly a great system. I wish it would have lasted longer and they would have kept on making different ones. They were produced by NEC, wasn't it?
Yes, actually. And that's based out of here in Atlanta, Georgia.
And then you had the TurboTap, which was a 4-way adapter that allowed 4 people to play, and it actually worked really well.
And they made a lot of games that worked for 4 players. That's the big deal. But I can't remember if I mentioned this in one of my other videos, but my dad's friend, she worked for NEC here in Georgia, and they gave all the employees one of everything they made. And so that's where I inherited my first TurboGrafx from. I had a TurboGrafx 16 with the CD and the TurboGrafx Express. Wasn't that what the handheld thing was called? Yeah, I had all that. She sold it all to me for $100. Now this was about 5 years ago, and I was like, wow, So I played like almost everything they made, all the CDs and all that. Well, then a friend of mine was like, oh man, he's like, you ought to sell that. He's like, man, it's worth a lot of money. And I'm like, nah, it's not. So I looked on eBay, and yeah, sure enough. So I put it in an auction, and I think I got $1,800, $2,000 for it, which back then was, 5 years ago, that was a lot of money. Now today, oh man, I'm kicking myself because I could imagine what I could sell it for today. But honestly, if I had it today, it wouldn't be sold. We would be doing a whole nother video of me walking through. Because let me tell you, one thing I can honestly say, I've seen a lot of impressive collections in my time, but I've yet to see someone, I've seen them on YouTube, of course, but in my gaming rounds and my knowledge and people I know who are diehard gamers, collectors, retros, all that, I've yet to see somebody with a 16 collection like that. Or, honestly, more than 30 games. I know plenty of people have TurboGrafx 16s, but they don't have more than 10, 15 games, This was impressive, even by my standards. And it takes a lot to impress me, because I've seen a lot in my life. But I'm talking every U card, complete in the case, systems complete boxed, CD completely boxed. It even has the little carrying case that once you put everything together, you could carry it. And, I mean, like I said, those things, it was magnificent. And even the CD system was really good. The only other system I think that was out around that time that blew TurboGrafx out of the water was the CDI. No, I'm just kidding. That thing was horrible. But I think that came out even later anyway. I think that was... I can't remember. That was definitely around PlayStation era, I think, the CDI. Another horrible system.
Around 3DO and all that.
Yeah. So...
The only other thing I wanted to mention, it was real quick though in there, one handheld that was not real well known, and this sucker was huge. It was the Atari Lynx. That thing was big. But it was a cool system. I love the game they had on there, Blue Lightning, or Blue Thunder, or whatever it was.
It was as big as a Game Gear.
Yeah.
Or maybe a little bit longer.
It was a lot wider than
because I remember you had to hold it long ways like this.
Then you had a set of buttons up here, or you could use the buttons down here.
I remember that. And 8 batteries?
Yeah.
Ugh. Worse than the Game Gear. The Game Gear would use some batteries. I'm talking, 6 AA's, or is it 4 AA's?
No, it was 6, I think.
Yeah. And in less than maybe 5 hours of gameplay, you were eating through. Now, given technology today, batteries last a lot longer. Back then, you had Duracell, regular Energizers.
And now we have the lithiums and
Yeah. Oh, God, those things are horrible about eating batteries. But I remember a lot of people didn't know this, and I used to make a lot of money at the store about this. But, you can use a Genesis 2 model. You can use that power supply on a Game Gear. A lot of people did not know that. And the thing is, back then at the store, we had used ones for like $10. Used Genesis 2 power supplies. But a brand new Game Gear power supply, they charged $24.95 for it because you thought you had to have that proprietary. My thing was, the minute I looked and saw that it had a little yellow tip on it, the same as Genesis 2, I was like, So then I look at the voltage, the output, and same output. So, a lot of people, I go to to this day, I'll go to Goodwill somewhere, and if I see a yellow tip power supply, I don't care what it's for, I'll look at the output. If the output and the polarity matches what the Game Gear does, I pick it up. And you'd be surprised. I mean, people don't think about stuff like that. And then another thing you can do too is even if the polarity and all that's not right, if you've got the right power supply in, you can clip the end off, resolder it. I wouldn't do this to resell it, but I've done it for a friend, I've done it for myself, But I fixed them like that too, so. But yeah, that Lynx, man, that thing was huge. Definitely. So, alright guys, well, like, subscribe in the comment section if you have any questions, want to see anything, please put it down there. As we mentioned in our last video, we're doing a contest pretty soon. Let's keep your eye out for that. And what can you say, man? In the words of Nintendo Power to the players.
That's right.